time is 6:35. I'll call this work session
And they're not
to
sure
order.
if they're gonna renew or not.
We'll go over the regular business meeting tonight. We have Rabbi Kisner from Local David giving an invitation. Also, we won't have a moment of silence, but to let everyone know that Sherry Patton, who used to work for the city for a long time, her brother passed away from cancer over the weekend. So we just ask that Mark Herndon, they're giving in prayers. You all received a copy of the announcements. We have no ceremonial matters tonight. Do we have approval of the May 11th minutes? Any questions about those?
I've got a request on the executive session minutes. We do not, there was a bifurcated meeting,
Okay.
and I have to get the, Ariane was at a funeral today,
Okay.
and,
So those will be postponed.
yes, you don't mind.
What about
I'll
the
get those
regular
to you.
meeting? Those are two separate issues.
Corrections to the work session minutes, those are okay.
Do you want to tell us what those are, or do you want to?
I'll just do it in there, I don't have to sit through it twice.
What about the May 7th and May 18th special call meetings?
Those are fine.
Okay. Mr. Vice?
Yes.
Okay. I'll report from Mr. Vice without Mr. Kirkland. Maybe here, anyone heard from Mr. Kirkland? No, Eric's not here
I
today.
think Tom Warner was gonna give the presentation.
City manager's report.
Just take mine for the budget.
And then we'll have, citizens will have an opportunity to give input on the budget, and then we will have our second reading on the budget.
And at this point, I hadn't heard anything after our budget hearing a couple of weeks ago from the public, so.
Anybody have questions now on the budget? Then we have the record service ordinance, second reading. So, can you give us?
It's the same as was proposed originally. It has been worked out really precisely by the police department. I think it's in good order to be approved. It's a vast improvement over where we were before.
Any questions on the record ordinance? Okay, then we have Wi-Fi for City Hall.
I have, we have brought the Mountain to Muhammad. We, the folks from Smart Wave Technologies, Al Brown and Cindy Jones are here to answer any questions that you may have regarding City Hall Wi-Fi. The proposal, I think you've seen that, it was for somewhere in the neighborhood of $804 exactly. And they are just going to talk a little, just for a very short few minutes about their company. They've just finished a job for GMA, and their references have been just superb from everyone they've worked with. So I'll just turn it over to Al Orson.
Hey, yes, we're a wireless integrator and located in Swanee, Georgia. We have 3 locations nationwide, California and Arizona also, but Swanee is our corporate headquarters. In your binders, you'll see company information. We've been in business for 15 years, pages of references, our scope of work, how we deploy wireless networks. The 3 quotes we've done, we met with Butch and Erica several times about the outdoor front lawn, covering all of that, the senior center, and then reconfiguring the wireless for public access here at City Hall.
The $804
That is
submittal is for which one of those 3?
the third one, reconfiguring the wireless
City Hall.
for public, exactly, for the public only.
And that's strictly the equipment to get it to work properly. Is there a monthly fee after the $804?
It's reconfiguring your existing infrastructure, so we're not going
Okay,
to be
so
adding any hardware. We're just providing some IT augmentation, if you will, right, support to make that happen.
So the hardware we currently have is capable of doing what we need to do.
Correct.
Within City Hall.
With some fine tuning from y'all.
Optimization.
Optimization.
Engineers.
Engineering optimization.
But you'll see the 3 quotes in section 4. The first one is the outdoor network, the wireless network for the front lawn.
So the first one, the 18,000, that would be the town green, but would that cover the city hall area and the senior center as well, or would those still all be separate? Like if we got the 18,000, would that save the 4,000 for the senior center?
No, it's two separate networks, two separate devices. The senior center will be 4 indoor access points that will scatter throughout floors 1 and 2. The outdoor network, 2 of the access points will be on top of City Hall, pointing towards the front lawn. Then we'll install 4 more access points on a lamp post around the front lawn, and that will cover the entire grass area.
So I guess my question, right now, tonight, we're looking at doing city hall. Is there any cost benefit we're looking at doing, for grouping them together?
Ongoing, there would be cost benefit. The system in place today is Cisco. We propose a alternative solution. There's more cost-effective products on the market now. There's been a lot of movement in the Wi-Fi technology market over the last 4 to 5 years, primarily because of this guy, right? This guy says, you don't have Wi-Fi, then I don't really want to associate with you, literally. The ongoing management, and I don't have the Phil doing inventory. And I'm sorry, guys, I've spent a lot of my time on the West Coast, so I'm a little bit, I step into things every once in a while, and I try not to leave with too much stuff with me. But for the equipment here, do we have an inventory of the equipment and the product type?
We can get up there. Sure.
Okay, so what we could do is we could take a look at that and kind of see where you're at in the technology curve and look at it from an ongoing support of that product versus merging something into the products that we're proposing so that you have a continuous platform or an easy to manage platform so it keeps your recurring costs low.
With the 18,000, is there ongoing costs associated with that?
There's not an ongoing cost. We included, I guess, the ongoing support for that. Now, in Wi-Fi, it is an unlicensed spectrum, okay? Which means that someone else can put up a Wi-Fi radio there as well, which could impact your signal strength. So there may be a need for ongoing optimization, right? It's a living, breathing network. And what's going to happen as you deploy it based on events, you may have a lot of people that come in there, and you'll pick up historical data, and you'll understand how to tune it at a very low cost. The technology proposed is very intelligent in itself, okay? If you're just providing Wi-Fi as an amenity, then I wouldn't engage us with an ongoing maintenance contract per se for professional services, possibly just the hardware piece. If you were using the network to provide Wi-Fi as an amenity and then also provide video surveillance or some other type of city service, and that's where you get the real benefit to do multiple applications on the infrastructure, then I would consider ongoing maintenance and optimization because you're going to have public safety and public service individuals leveraging the network.
Now, on the $804 for City Hall Wi-Fi, if we were to upgrade at a later date, that would be consistent with it? You wouldn't have to go through this again?
If you were to upgrade that, and I'm a little bit disadvantaged because I haven't reviewed the inventory, right? But if we have to replace the hardware here, there would be a cost associated with that, right? And then we would just add on licenses to the management platform that manages all the radios. So you would have everything controlled by a single device.
I'm just concerned that if we spend $804 now, are we throwing that away if we make a change in the future? Or does that integrate with whatever else you would propose that we do?
Right, the $804 would be a quick fix, if you will, for what you have.
Does any of this, none of this includes the video cameras we talked about. And originally there were concerns because of our server and I guess confidential information or protected information. Is there any security requirement or anything like that?
There's a number of different options for securing the network, and I think that's what the city hall piece was, to be able to split up the public information and private information, what have you. There are approaches that we would take, and if you like open up your device, you see these Wi-Fi networks that are out there, and you'll see some have a key lock on them and some don't. For open access, you could have that to where the individuals just click on it and they go a separate, totally separate logical route, so there's no information that can be hacked, if you will. For the public information, the security, it's a acronym WPA2. There's a lot of guys out in somewhere in Utah trying to hack it that work for the NSA. I think it's pretty good. So, you know, it's pretty standard for all the municipal governments we work with throughout the U.S.
I think you'll have a lot of options in the future. I know with the, not having a contractor yet on the green to work with, based on what we've got, I would hope by the opening of the new green that we have this out there. We may even have some cameras for the sheep. But at this point in time, I had just thought you wanted to take this first step.
There has been a resurgence in the marketplace of community Wi-Fi, if you will, for a variety of reasons. A lot of the cities we work with, they actually use it as part of economic redevelopment. We did a pretty large project in San Jose, downtown San Jose. They came to SmartWave out of Sewanee. Tells you how serious they were about it, right? And how unique the smart guys at SmartWave are. I'm the wave in SmartWave, by the way, not the smart guy. But there was a lot of vacant real estate downtown, so they engaged us to build a network that could enhance and excite the community, right? And how it was paid for was actually from another public service. It was actually parking that paid for it. And I don't, you know, you probably don't pay for parking, stuff like that. But what I would encourage you to do as a city, and I'm a taxpayer in Georgia, in Roswell, in working with them, it's like, let's find out the number of different applications we can leverage the network for, right? It may offset some other type of telco costs that you have today. It may be grant funded from PD for video surveillance and then Wi-Fi as an amenity. And we can separate that network logically or physically so that data is protected.
One of the issues I've had with considering, because I know there are some people pushing to do like the whole city, you know, Wi-Fi enabled. But one of my main concerns is that the technology changes so quickly. And we spend the $18,000 to get it all out there on the green, and within a year or two, new phones come out, new something happens, and none of it's compatible anymore. And we gotta keep upgrading, or the equipment. I mean, I know it was probably 4 or 5 years ago, there were some articles where cities had spent, larger cities had spent millions of dollars to be Wi-Fi enabled, and it wound up just eating them up.
Right.
In cost.
I know exactly where you're coming from. San Jose kind of had some big dreams on that too, and you know, the reality of it is Wi-Fi for an entire city, you have to have a very unique city infrastructure with, you know, utility poles and everything else. Kind of what we've been working on with our clients is really purpose-built networks. You can advertise as citywide Wi-Fi, but it's basically in the city parks, right? It's this green is a good area, especially if you have events there, right? You want to put it where people are going to leverage the infrastructure, because then you get a greater return on your tax dollar, right? So that's what we encourage, and with the technology is changing. The technology that we proposed in the Wi-Fi spectrum, if you Google 802.11ac, it's the latest version, but it works with older devices. And you typically have a life cycle change of like 5 years is typically what takes place. So I think we're good where we're at. I mean, obviously we're confident in it because we proposed it, but you're at you're at the next wave of technology, and it's not that it's not proven. I mean, we've got radios all across the US that are using the same product set. But going back to your first point, definitely build it where you're gonna get a return on it. And we'd love for you to pay us to build it across the entire city, but, you know, we'd probably be lapped out of business, right? And years ago, you know, we've always been an RF engineering design build firm. Years ago, there was a lot of buzz in the marketplace for municipal Wi-Fi. Honestly, I felt the consulting community did a poor job of really expectation setting of what the technology could or could not do. It's a very short range technology. It's not like cellular, okay? It's impacted by a lot of different things. It's not a licensed frequency, it's unlicensed. So just knowing how it operates and to see some of these RFPs from larger cities like Philadelphia and so forth come forth, that, you know, it was exciting, but from a feasibility standpoint, it just didn't make sense, right, of what was being asked for. So I can promise you this, we will set the right expectations with what it is and what it isn't. I mean, we do a lot of this.
Well, there's really not a lot of places within the city. I know it wouldn't be a city-sponsored thing, but the cable companies, Comcast, I mean, everybody's opening their Wi-Fi structure to, there's not many places you can go and not try to access somebody's Wi-Fi if you've got one of those providers. I mean, there's really many places, there's probably less that you don't have it can do to do. I mean, as far as, you know, just driving down the street. I mean, I have it pop up all the time. You want to connect to this one or this one or this one.
We
So
still
the
have,
providers are still out there. So.
well, and that's a good point. You've still got to have credentials to get there.
Right.
And
And many people do because they're Comcast, you know, share, you know, they have that service or Infinity, whatever. I mean, so a lot of people, it's almost nonstop that they have it available out there.
and you'll still have Wi-Fi at the Starbucks and things like that.
Oh,
But,
sure.
but as a, you know, what we're, you know, my understanding is we're talking about a city service.
Right.
And we're not at the control of Comcast as to what we do on the network or what type of service we provide.
Is the, you said a typical life cycle is about 5 years, is the 802.11ac, are we at the beginning of that life cycle?
We're at
or
the
are we
beginning of
towards
that
the
life
end?
cycle.
Okay. And what would be, if we approve the, city hall tonight, what would be the turnaround time then to actually get something in place, do you know?
It would probably be,
You probably need to see the inventory.
well, for the indoor, we would, but if you're talking about the $18,000 quote for the outdoors, I would need to check product availability. We could have guys installing within a couple of weeks.
Is the outdoor something, you know, we have festivals outdoors, is it something that the vendors could then use to run like their credit card systems and things like that?
You definitely could set it up and possibly use that as a means to recoup the cost by doing, by authorizing, letting them pay for access, for point of sale. We did that, I don't know if you guys ever watched the Heritage Golf Tournament in Hilton Head, but we provide the Wi-Fi for those guys, and it was actually this very similar solution 1 year or 2 years older, right? And they used it to allow for credit card authorizations, and it actually increased the revenue $30,000 in the first day, just being able to do that versus cash. So it's definitely paid for itself down
I
there.
think we might need an investigatory trip down there.
You gotta check it all out.
And the city can also set up its own splash page for marketing, for events, for advertising, to drive revenue, people to the festival.
Any other questions? Thanks, Albert. I appreciate it. Resolution for absentee ballot clerk and poll managers, I emailed y'all this afternoon, I don't know if you have that. The COSA section says that the government, we had continued this one last time, the closed section says the government authority appoints the absentee ballot and poll managers. It's my understanding that, Nelson does not wish to be a poll manager this year. And so, I know Grace Clower's name had come up and she would be willing to accept if the council wanted to appoint her as poll manager. And she talked about, John and Elaine Mitchell being assistant poll managers, and they would be willing to serve if council appointed them, so if that's their names in there. The absentee ballot clerk, people can come in during absentee ballot period and vote, so that person needs to be at City Hall. I looked back at the old resolutions, and it was typically Ms. Arnold, and then, Ms. McKay and Ms. Downs were, deputy clerks, absentee ballot clerks. So the way the resolution was, it would be Ms. Richardson as absentee ballot clerk, the other two, election superintendent committee members, Ms. Schultz and Mr. Byrne as deputy, and then Ms. Downs as deputy, since she would also be on City Hall premises during the day. So does anybody have questions about that? What do you-
Yeah, I think we need to wait till we get a recommendation from the election committee. Get a recommendation from them, the ones that are pulling it, let them decide what about the, I agree with, Grace Power, agree with very strongly with her, but that's one of the people. I don't know that those are people that have been vetted by the entire committee, but I think we need to, you trusted them with that, and we need to give them the authority to let us know.
I think the committee had already recommended Mr. and Mrs. Mitchell to be poll workers. They've worked our polls for several years. And then the absentee ballot clerks are the committee, so I don't know if they necessarily need to be vetted by the committee.
Well, where did this resolution come from? Did you create it?
I went back in our old resolutions, and it's, usually what happens is when we call the election, when we do that initial resolution, we also appoint the absentee ballot clerk and the poll managers, and we didn't do that this year, so we missed that element in the resolution that we did. So what I did is I took that language from the old resolutions and made this one, but it's from the old resolution. You go back, there's one from 2011, 2013, they're almost identical.
Yeah, I think we just need to let the elections committee look over this, let Mr. Powell look over this, and then, let the committee actually bring forth the recommendation for the people, and it may be these people. But I think they should have the opportunity to make that recommendation to us. before we
The
do
committee's
this.
doing a great job. They have met, I think, 4 times so far, and they are outlining recommendations with regard to these positions and recruiting people to work at every level. Just so everybody gets a good picture, the absentee ballot clerk person who's charged with keeping safely unopened and stored in a manner that would prevent tampering and unauthorized access all official absentee ballots received from the absentee electors prior to the closing of the polls. And so it's a really safeguarding function when it comes to those ballots coming in. Then there's a decision-making function, which in our case ballot falls to the absentee ballot, which is discretionary in some ways, where they're identifying whether the oath has been signed properly, whether the signature in comparison to the signature on the electorate is accurate. So that person has some discretionary powers that are subjective in the determinations. And so with the complexity of Snellville, you have tensions where city clerk is actually suing in the city and made accusations that people are going to be running. And so with the setup of the committee approach to things, that gives it some stability, and letting that group then depoliticize those appointments and get everybody comfortable that there's a sense of fairness in it is really important to the election process, because these do have discretionary powers with them, and it needs to be somebody that the group feels or the system that they set up is independent of the elected officials.
I'm leaving it on the agenda, I'll read it into the record, and then y'all can make a motion that you wish at the appropriate time. Resolution on Georgia Department of Transportation and Good Community Agreement.
Mayor, really, the next 3 items are very much housekeeping, check the box type of items. The first one, that allows the green project to move forward. DOT requests, always request indemnification if there's going to be an encroachment onto their right-of-way. It may be landscaping, it may be irrigation, but it's something that we need to provide for them. And only the mayor and council can do that.
Okay, any questions on that?
Just to make that a little easier, the Supreme Court said that cities can't indemnify. So, I don't know who's advising the DOT, but it's a nullity. And so there was in the one that I looked at, I think it was a sign or something, that was in the indemnity, and it didn't have a description with it. That was what we are indemnifying, didn't have a description. The form of it was yeah, that's it. So it's just figuring out from the form, what you attach to it that would be, you know, if it were a real indemnity, if I were really worried about it, I'd want to see where this, you want to put an attachment with it that showed the obstruction that was in the right of way, so that you knew where your liability was. And it would still be good to have an idea of what those improvements are and attach it as an exhibit to the recording document.
So
In
you're
this
saying,
situation, sorry, we're gonna actually have, I think, the original design had part of the sign and I think maybe even part of the stage in the right of way.
It'd be good to mark that area, just highlight, just get your design plan, highlight it, attach it as an exhibit to this. Whatever you're asking to encroach with, just mark it on there so you know the extent of your liability, even if it was enforceable. That's just a drafting suggestion. So it's not just open-ended.
we'll add a survey and mark that then. Okay, good
The
deal.
DOT is gonna add a right turn lane on Oak Road onto Highway 78. So we're gonna lose about 5 feet. Does that have any impact on this? Do we need to address that? Because the lines are gonna move.
The only thing that agreement says about that subject is that if they decide to do something and your improvement's in the way, they have the right to come in and take your improvement out regardless. They reserve that right,
So
so.
the turn lane, their right to come in is gonna be further into our improvement because their easement is so far off.
But I don't know if we need to define that or if it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter with this agreement. I just would try and avoid putting things where you know they're coming.
You need a right turn.
Does that mean, is our design?
They know about it. The wall has to move.
Yeah, Michael knows.
Okay, so they're reworking that.
Because otherwise we put up the wall and you're not down.
Right.
But that's nothing new with DOT. The second one, every 3 years, the county has to send to the state a CDBG cooperative agreement. They ask all the cities, do you want to remain a part of our CDBG program? And that's what the approval of the agreement that was enclosed in your packet would do. Basically, we say we stay a part of the county CDBG program.
Sidewalks.
Skyland Drive, I know, Tony, I think you've
Oh, yeah.
been dealing with the county on that. There are some drainage and sidewalk improvements along Skyland they need.
It is right at the corner of Skyland and 78. The city is identified as the owner of a small triangle right there. And the right-of-way request is 665 square feet. It's just a little teeny piece for sidewalk improvement. And the easement, the permanent construction easement, is a slope easement of 104. So it's, 10 by 10, little bitty area that they're asking that the city deed them access to make those improvements.
Where does the dollar come in?
It's a fiction. I'm betting we never see it.
So can we use this as leverage to trade with them for something?
With Grant County.
Yeah.
Because they always-
Can we get a new traffic light
How
or a?
desperately you think they need this sidewalks in your city?
Traffic lights. I mean, really.
Well, not traffic lights, I just threw that out there.
Roundabout.
You know,
I don't think we have much
roundabouts.
leverage.
Yeah, they look at it as
Yeah,
though
can we
they're doing
leverage
you a
this?
favor when they get there, they're asking you to help, and
Could we,
they're
uh,
probably right.
What happened though, these sidewalks are now only gonna be 600 feet, so when did that happen?
What's that?
They're only gonna go down Skyline 600 feet now?
They're, that's internal on their part. I don't know if they will extend that after we do 78, but
Is that from the, are you getting that from something that says that's the project link, or are you just looking at the drawing?
that's not.
Because this is just one page.
I got that from somebody that said that Mayor Overholtzer told him at the planning commission meeting that they ran out of money and it was only gonna be 600 feet now. So I'm wondering if that affects the sidewalks down 78 towards, Grayson Parkway.
No, doesn't affect that at all.
I mean, the fact that they don't have money to do more than 600 feet, is there still money in the pot to do those?
Yeah, we've got a contract, we've got an agreement.
That brings us to our work session agenda in just a minute. I have some correspondence to review. You all received the email from GMA convention coming up at the end of the month. We do need to get credit card authorization forms. And so I don't know who's in charge of that this year, Mr. Sanders, but we need to make sure.
No problem
That we
there.
have that done before we get there, otherwise we'll all be paying for our own rooms when we get there.
I know Ariane has, Phyllis, I don't know if she's talked to you about it, but I know she's been working on that.
Yeah, I
And,
told her she needed.
I think we have, what, 3 hotels here that we're working with? The Westin, the Marriott, and the Hyatt. So she'll take care of that ahead of time. Everything will just be master billed.
Then we also received a letter from ARC. They're starting, they're created 12 GO teams, government outreach teams. And they've divided up the Metro Atlanta area into one of these 12 teams. And so our new contact person is Liz Sanford or Scott Haggard for our area now. So I don't know if anybody ever reaches out to them, but that's who our new contact would be for Snellville. Mr. Powell, anything for you?
I just need an executive session, personnel and litigation.
And I need one for property acquisition.
Okay. And then I asked that we put on here, review of the credit card use policy. This is, there was House Bill 192 that recently got passed. And it says that, government elected officials and government employees can no longer use P-cards, or there's certain restrictions. So GMA's published a model ordinance, and the model ordinance they've published only deals with elected officials. I don't think any of our elected officials actually use P-cards or credit cards, but I know we do have a policy for our city employees, and I think reading the actual House bill, it affects the city employees, so I put it on here so that we could start the discussion of what we need to do to come into compliance, but I know this probably gave you no notice, so here you go.
I think GMA is going to have a program on that in Savannah too.
Yeah. Technical assistance grant to Snellville DDA. Mr. Rick?
Stephen Crosby is here with us this evening from the ARC. It's a short presentation on the grant.
Sure. Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate the chance to speak with y'all tonight. This is in response to the city's application to the Atlanta Regional Commission's Community Choices Program, which provides direct technical assistance to local governments throughout metropolitan Atlanta to help them implement their plans. And so the city applied on behalf of the Downtown Development Authority back at the end of the year, and we accepted that project with 5 others. We're working throughout Metro Atlanta. And the content of our scope of work is really to do some best practices research on public-private partnerships throughout Georgia and the rest of the country, for other communities that have kind of spearheaded the downtown or redevelopment of town centers. And so we'll be looking at places like Suwanee and Norcross and Duluth, as well as other peer communities throughout the country. Specific concerns or things that we're looking at are the specific process that's followed, the different steps that are taken, who the major players are at the table, what their roles are. Specific peer communities, we had a good conversation with the DEA members about a couple of weeks ago about communities that they think would be good ones for us to look at and to examine, as well as documents and agreements, MOUs, specific contracts. We want to pull all of that documentation that we can so that it gives the city and the DDA as much guidance as possible in terms of moving forward with y'all's project. And so I'm here tonight just to kind of say that we look forward to working with you all, and the members of the DDA and Mr. Van Otteren. And to get your thoughts before we really begin this project in earnest. We have an intern who is solely devoted to this project and looking through the research and pulling together a great product for you all. So any thoughts or ideas on this project as we get started? Anything you want us to pay specific attention to, or any comments or thoughts you may have?
Can you leave us your contact information or send us all an initial email? Maybe
Yes.
we can go to our city website and find that. And that way we'll have direct contact.
Happy to do that.
Anything else? Thank you for coming out tonight, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Proposed GMA bylaw amendments, we turned in our voting credentials. Mr. Witz is gonna attend the business meeting, is that on Sunday or Monday, I can't remember. To vote for us, I don't know if you all got this, I think it just went out to the new mayors. There is going to be a bylaw amendment, basically, all it does is, change the names of some of the committees. And so I'll pass these around if you guys wanna look at them, if anyone has any heartburn about any of them, let Mr. Witz know, but otherwise, they just seem to be pretty straightforward. If no one has any questions, I'll go ahead and move on, and I can pass that around and let you know after the meeting. All right, Tiger Grant. For weeks, you guys have heard me harping about the Tiger Grant. Actually, probably for years now, I've been harping about the Tiger Grant, how wonderful it's gonna be. And about 3 weeks ago, we found out, usually the Tiger Grant comes out, I don't know, April or May, and it's due in September. About 3 weeks ago, we found out that this year, the application was due June 5th. So I did some research, met with some people, and met with Mr. Sanders, and it was determined that we couldn't get an application in that would be up to the city standard in time. So what I want to do tonight is talk about it a little bit and go ahead and appoint a committee now to start working on the application for next year. There's nothing that says we have to wait until it's released to work on it. And so, as you all know, because we've met about Tiger Grant before, it's a federal funding, federal highway grant. It does not come out of the highway funding, it comes out of its own pot of money, so it's, when you hear about the highway funding, that's blowing belly up, it's not the Tiger Grant. There is a city in Alabama. Well, first of all, the Tiger Grant Committee, you can go on their website and I'll ask Phyllis, Ms. Richardson, if she'll make a copy of all this for everyone. Ms. Sosby at the 78 CID did a wonderful job of making a packet about the Tiger Grant. And so, Ms. Richardson, if you could copy that and give it to each of us, so we'll have a copy. What they look for is alternative ways of transportation, things that are gonna help connect cities through bike lanes, pedestrian traffic, and things like that. But they also, what I've learned is they're also looking at projects that aren't too big, because they have $500 million, but they like to spread it around to as many cities as possible. I think they had something like 504 cities apply last year. And so you all should have received an email from me today. It had the application from Olean, New York, which was a small city in New York that received it. I know some people up there, and so they sent us their application so we could see what one looked like. You also received some pictures from Foley, Alabama. Now, Foley, Alabama received a Tiger grant last year. We've been talking with their city manager, and he actually has family here in Snellville, so he was happy to share some information, but they started off with this huge project, this $20 million project, and they've applied for 3 years before they actually got the Tiger grant. And the great thing about the Tiger grant is every time you apply, if you don't get it, the committee will meet with you and tell you what was wrong with your application. So each year you can tweak it so that hopefully the goal is eventually you will tweak it enough that you will actually get it. So it's been detrimental to us that we haven't been applying because we've lost those years of getting that information. But what Foley did is they came up with this master plan, and they had pedestrian sidewalks, and they had bridges and bike lanes, and ultimately the Tiger people told them it was too big. They needed to scale it back to exactly what they needed. And so what we've talked about is with the 78-124 intersection, trying to tie that in. That's gonna go through and get funded probably before we ever get a Tiger application off. So what we've been looking at is just the pedestrian bridge part of it, which was something that we originally had talked about tying into the Tiger grant. So that's exactly what Foley, Alabama did, was pedestrian bridges. And so we talked about possibly 3 of them. And if you look at theirs almost match City Hall's brick design and what's this stuff called on the bottom? Not stucco, but cement.
Could be granite.
Stone, granite. Anyway, this design almost matches. They have elevator shafts. You have to make the bridges handicap accessible. I talked to their city manager, how did they decide to do elevators and not ramps? Ramps actually take up a whole lot more space, and so the elevators were actually more cost effective. They actually just bid this out. In their grant, they had projected that it was gonna be about 1.2 million. They bid it out in January, and it came back to 1.66 million. So they provided figures if we wanted to use them for a grant application, we could use their estimates. There's drawings with the roadway, the length of the road that we can use renderings. What they did though is they got letters of support and from the school saying it would be used as a crosswalk or cross path for the school. From the businesses, they did a survey in their community showing that people wanted this. So there's a lot of things in there that we could start doing now, so that when it comes around, we will be prepared to apply for it again. So I'm gonna ask that, Ms. Bender, if you're willing to serve on that committee. And I'm gonna ask Jason and Brian and Mr. Sanders to serve on that committee.
And that, the 2 biggest things, the most technical items, are the benefit cost analysis and the economic impact statement. And it's gonna take a consultant to do properly. So, it's an in-depth process. I mean, that's something that is gonna take months. You need to start early.
And it may be, at one point in time, we had spoken with Susan Bacon, I can't remember the name of her company now. It was gonna cost us about $6,000 to hire them to come in and actually write the grant. Maybe something that when we get along, we need to come back to mayor and council and say, hey, we need this money to write this grant, but at least we will start the discussion now instead of waiting right before him. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
How
about that?
technically detailed these applications have to be in terms of what you're gonna build, where you're gonna build it? Or you just wanna say, we wanna put in pedestrian bridges, and they say, fine?
They don't have to be technical, because one of the things, if you look at the application I sent you, and one of the things that Foley also did is part of the grant covered their engineering. So you don't have to spend the money up front to actually do to apply for the grant. You can incorporate that into the actual grant.
And I did contact Russell to find out, because the mayor thought that maybe he had hired somebody in the past, and he couldn't make that connection.
At one point in time, we had a pedestrian bridge. We only had one of them, but we did have a pedestrian bridge in some of our renderings.
In the town center plan, I think there
Yeah,
were
the
a
town
couple.
center.
I had one over at 124.
Right, but I don't know where all those, I know, but I don't know where the actual engineering work is for that. I don't know if there is anything.
Mark Patterson's checking.
Yeah, okay.
There wasn't any.
Yeah, it was just
It was
engineering,
just
so it
engineering.
wasn't.
But it was Clark Patterson.
Yeah, whoever did that town center. And urban design and all of them, DPZ. It was
One of
all-
them proposed a bridge and one of them proposed a tunnel, so we couldn't remember who.
Well, the,
was-
no, well, the tunnel subject is different. Tunnel's under 78, it's different than the.
Any other questions?
In fact, there may have been a second bridge too being talked about for down by South Gwinnett.
There was.
There was, which is cool.
But the tunnel under 78 was to connect into that future business district down behind the Methodist church area. And that was gonna be a roadway, not necessarily pedestrian.
Other questions? Okay, millage rate, we received a letter from the county, although after we got Mr. Sanders' email, I called today, and Stephen Pruitt is in meetings all day, and that's why we didn't get the tax digest, but they said we should get it by the end of the week.
Shortens our time frame, that's for sure.
We have to have the tax digest to the county by, or excuse me, the millage rate to the county by July 2nd. Depending on what the rollback rate is, whether we keep that or not, we have to advertise either 2 times or 3 times. And so we'll have to have special call meetings. Now, one of those can be at the meeting where we actually adopt it. And usually we do one that's like in the morning and one that's in the afternoon. But we're gonna be gone to GMA, so, and we have to advertise it for at least 2 weeks before we can call the meeting, so it kind of puts us right in that GMA time, so.
As soon as we get it,
There is some flexibility, you know, the county says there's no flexibility, but there is some flexibility, there usually is some flexibility on that.
they gave us a day. But I told Ms. Richardson, as soon as we get it, we'll go to work. That's all I can tell you. We'll get you all the information that we can.
Do we want to go ahead and call the special call meeting for the actual final adoption date? Is there a date that works for y'all that week of July 1st? I know that's when we come back from Savannah on the 30th, and then is anybody going to be?
I think you could do it that Monday the 7th.
and get it to them?
We wanted to do that.
Monday's the sixth.
Huh?
Monday's the sixth. You got the first, the second, and the sixth.
I didn't know if anybody's going out south for the 4th of July.
Oh.
If that week's good.
Yeah. Kelly won't let me leave.
Better do it as late as you can.
I don't know
Better do it
this
before
time.
you- Well, we're off the
I
3rd.
don't know at this point.
That's all right, I know where I'll be here.
Me and Tommy,
Are we closed on Friday?
yeah.
Alright, so I'm gonna call a special call meeting for the purpose of adopting the millage rate for July 2nd.
Is that Thursday, Mary?
Yeah.
There's a planning, specially called planning commission meeting that night.
What time is that?
7:30.
So I'll call it for 7 o'clock, is that okay?
Yeah, it's only gonna be a 5-minute meeting usually. Unless we have a, unless it's gonna be a tax increase, then everybody's gonna be out.
Definitely all about that.
And so there'll be 2 agenda items, one will be public comment on the millage rate, and then one will be a resolution, setting the millage for 2015 millage rate.
That means the 18th is 2 weeks prior to that date.
June 18th.
They better,
We should have it by then. Right, we have it at the end of this week, that's the 12th. That gives us 6 days to,
Weren't we supposed to have it
advertising now,
today?
getting it to the paper,
So they should put it to
They don't.
tomorrow.
yeah, it takes them a few days. We'll do the best, as soon as we get it.
at least that way it's on everybody's agenda, if we need to change it, we will. Okay. Discussion of impact fees, we're almost out of time, you all received the email from Mr. Sanders, so I'll just ask this be placed on the next work session so we can digest that. Annexation committee update, we met today, we're moving along fairly well, Jason and John, Mr. Thompson and Mr. Dennis have done a great job in getting information together far as the cost, benefit, and other benefits to property owners, and we're hoping to start contacting property owners along Highway 78 west in the next couple of weeks. Website committee update, we're gonna write something for the welcome page.
Put that on for next meeting.
Update on zoning ordinance overhaul.
We had two very good interviews with the firms last week, and I'm calling references, and they're very distinct. You have one group that is very regimented, and they've already said, you know, there are only 2 public meetings involved in this, and only 5 subcommittee meetings. The other group is saying that that's a maximum amount. They had more flexibility. I felt like they had a little more creativity. Jason and John and I met with these folks, so we will have a recommendation at the next meeting.
Art commission discussion, we'll talk about that at next meeting, and we've already reviewed the indemnity agreement. We have 5 minutes, is that enough time for exec session, or we need to come back after our meeting?